Hello, my name is Bee Daws of Bee Daws Puppetry. This is my lovely twin sister Lotte, who you might remember from the last video. And we were talking about the basic principles of puppetry. Now, there's lots of different styles of puppetry. One we're going to talk about now is Bunraku Puppetry. Now, usually this would have been done by... No, let me start again. Hello! Oh, I'm too warm now. Okay, it is hot today. I don't know if you're watching this when it's hot, but it's so hot. Okay, right. Right, 3, 2. Hi there, I'm Bee Daws of Bee Daws Puppetry, and this is my lovely twin sister Lotte, who you might have recognised from the last video, where we were talking about the basic principles of puppetry. Now, in this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about Bunraku Puppetry. Now, usually we would have 3 puppeteers, but it's just going to be us 2, so bear with us while we try and show you the principles as well as the techniques with only 2 of us. It still works, but if you have 3 people, it's much better. Now, Bunraku Puppetry, I believe, is a Japanese puppetry art. It's been around for many, many years, even before actors were kind of around, because a puppet could be fixed in a certain character or a costume without much sort of worry. We've got a basic puppet here. This is just a canvassy puppet that I use in some of my workshops. So if you're watching this and have been to one of my workshops, you'll recognize these guys. If you want to make one of these at home, literally just get any canvas material and draw a little pattern of a human, cut it out, sew it together, stuff it, and you got yourself a puppet. Now, if you haven't watched the last video about the basic principles of puppetry, definitely go ahead and watch that before you watch these ones, because it will make a lot more sense. Because we'll be using the principles of puppetry while telling you about Bunraku Puppetry. Now we have our, I don't know if you guys can see that, but we have our list of basic principles. So you've got muscle or gravity, focus of the puppeteers, focus of the puppet, stillness, breath, and emotional movement. With Bunraku Puppetry, this is a great team building exercise because it's very much about leaving your ego at the door, working together as a team, be very aware of each other. We know from puppeteering together before that it's really important to be on the same level as each other and not have one person leading, one person following, everybody's doing the same thing. And we'll sort of go through that as we're puppeteering the puppets. So we don't actually have a name for the guy. Can we name him? Brian?
Brian.
That's a good name.
I was going to say with Bunraku style puppetry, having 3 people, you're essentially one person because you're playing this character.
Yeah.
So like Bea said, you can't have one leader, you can't have the feet leading or the heart leading or the head leading. It has to be all together, which we'll talk about, like how you do that with this style of puppetry.
Yeah, because like, you know, most people would have seen Warhorse. Obviously if one...
An excellent example.
Yeah, if one puppeteer was puppeteering the back legs different from the front legs or the head, it would just look really weird. You're all one person, one thing. So if you want to do a group building exercise, then show them this video. It will be a great exercise. So what we'll do is we'll start out by sort of puppeteering, showing you where the puppeteers would go. So if you do have 3 people, these are where they would go. So one person would be on the head. So you would just grab the head, and one of you, the same person, sorry, would be on one of the arms, like that. The other person would be on the body. So as you can see, just pinch the body there, and I'd be on the other arm, like that. But obviously you can see that that's a little bit, there's no gravity involved in that. So what we're going to do is we're going to puppeteer with one of us being on the legs. So you've got on the legs, body, arm, head and arm. Some people have done it in the past where they will puppeteer, one person will be both the arms, and one person will be the head and the body. But I find that sometimes that doesn't work in the sense of positioning of the puppeteers, because usually the person that is on the legs is in the middle, and then it's easier for me to be here and Lotte to be there, and then the person in the middle doing the legs. Now we'll just sort of look at muscle and gravity for a bit. So as you can see, if I'm holding him like that, he doesn't necessarily have that much muscle. So if I was to sort of walk him along, he's not really, but you kind of need to have this tension. So what I recommend to people to do is, if you're on the legs, is to pull down, and if you're on the head, to just pull up a little bit. Now when he walks now, there's a little bit more weight to him, as you can probably see. Okay, so in relation to that, if I'm pulling down, it's just got a little bit more heaviness to him. So I always say that, for example, if I was to let go, if the puppet flies up, it means you're doing it right. But if he kind of just drops like that, it's not doing it right. So you really need to pull down, because that tension will help. So if you're on the body, you're helping that kind of resistance. Oh, his legs are funny. You're helping that resistance. I don't know if you can see that, but it's that kind of buoyancy. Okay, which feels really real when you're puppeteering. Okay, so focus of the puppeteers. Obviously, Lotte is on the head and the arm, so you would probably just focus on the head if you were on the head and arm, just because that's kind of your main bit. Usually the puppeteer that is on the head will be the voice. Depends if your puppet has a voice. It doesn't have to, but we're not going to do voices today because it's not necessary, but if you are on the head, you would usually do the voice. So if I'm on the legs, I'll obviously be focusing my gaze on the legs. If I'm looking away, I'm not able to see what Lotte is doing, and I might go the wrong way to where the head's going. Okay. We've also got the focus of the puppet. This guy does not have eyes, as you can see. So we have to sort of figure out an eye line. So I reckon the eye line is going to be about there. So you want to make sure that he's looking where he's going, because obviously if you're, for example, if we walk the puppet across the stage without actually him looking in the right direction, it just kind of looks a bit odd. But if he was to look where he was going, it's got a little bit more realism to him. Okay. So the focus is really important, isn't it? So when, so for example, if we're both looking away, not looking at the puppet, you'll be looking at us, won't you? And you know, I guess why do you feel like that's important?
Well, because then the audience is looking at the puppet. The puppet is the main thing, especially because as puppeteers, we're behind the puppet and we are puppeteering this as the character. You said something about upstaging in the last video.
Yeah.
If the puppet was here,
yeah, it would look very
odd. So the puppet is the focus. So your focus needs to be on the puppet.
And what was it you said before? You said something about fading away.
Yeah, so
kind of fade away from the puppet.
Yeah, so if you've been to puppet shows where they have this style of puppetry in there, I've seen one in Edinburgh, and you sort of forget that the puppeteers are there, and you see the puppet as a character because they've got all of those, you know, the gravity, the focus, and
that's really important to say as well, is that if you're puppeteering a Bunraku puppet, or any kind of puppet really, always be behind the puppet. Yeah. There's no point in being in front of the puppet, because then there's no point actually having it. You are upstaging it. So that is a very good point about the focus of the puppeteers as well. And the focus of the puppet as well, you need to be looking where he's going. This is something we mentioned before as well, the stillness of a puppet. It's very easy to make a puppet look too noisy. So for example, this is another thing that can happen if you're not working together as puppeteers. So for example, if I was doing this, well, we'll just do a little bit of puppeteering. It just looks a bit like we're not working together at all here. And it just looks a bit chaotic. It looks a bit too noisy.
And it looks unnatural as well.
It does look unnatural. Whereas like if you just stood there for a little bit, you can see how much that is much more powerful to watch than to have all this going on.
They become a living thing rather than an object when you do stuff like that.
That is write that quote down. That's good. So we've got that sort of down. So stillness is really important. There's not to say that your puppet character might not have loads of things that he does, but it's important that you get the stillness down first and then add on your kind of characteristics. So if he was a very nervous character, you might have him, act a little bit more nervous. So you can see that instead of just stepping, I'm making him shuffle a little bit more, and potentially he isn't really looking where he's going, or he's sort of shuffling a little bit more that way and this way and all that kind of stuff. All right. So the next thing is breath, which, as we said in the last video, is very important. Now, with this kind of puppet, if you had somebody at the body, it is kind of easy to make him breathe. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but it's very easy to make him breathe by just sort of squishing in his body. But because we don't have a third puppeteer, it's quite hard to show that. So if you are a two-person puppeteer, puppet unit, you might just have his legs bent slightly. And as you can see, it's just that slight movement. And you find, actually, you start breathing with the puppet, as all of you, just to make that one unit.
One use of breath as well, it's not only to give life into the puppet, but it can be a really good thing to cue your movement as well. Yeah. So say if me and Bee were sort of standing and I wanted to indicate that I wanted to move, I might take a bit of a louder intake of breath. So it's kind of that movement, and it's a really good cue point as well if you're working together.
That links on quite nicely to our next principle, which is emotional movement. So, for example, if this guy, what do we call you?
Brian.
If Brian was sort of waiting for a bus and then the bus suddenly arrived, it might look something like this. And then he steps on the bus. So you can see how, hopefully you heard that, but by Lotte, the other puppeteer, being able to give me a breath signal is really helpful to then know what emotional movement is, and I know exactly what's happening. Obviously, I already said what was going to happen before it happened, but still that emotional movement is really important to have kind of those breaths.
Yeah, and having breath cues is a lot sort of cleaner than going go.
Yes, or nudging that's very important.
Because it is really so important to all breathe together, and then you're all as one. Like I said earlier, you're playing this character as one person. 3 people are playing this one character.
You're all on the same team, and I think that it's so important that as a puppeteer, you're invested in this character as a unit. What I did in uni with the company I was working with at the time, we literally spent a good few months solidly just puppeteering, spending as much time together as possible, and actually got to the point where we would we did that exercise, you see it in Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they put their hands behind their back and you use their hands and actually did normal things for each other, and it's kind of like that helps you, and it helps when you're very close to another puppeteer as well. Obviously we're twin sisters, so it's quite easy for us to be on the same team, know exactly what's going to happen. So if you are a puppeteer and you are watching this video and you haven't worked with another puppeteer before, so if you are at home and you are looking to do other puppetry with other people and you've never worked with another one before, it's really good to just spend some quality time with each other, I think, even if that be just to play with the puppet, because you'll learn the character through playing. I think play is a really important thing to puppetry.
But like you said as well, like you become really in tune with people. I remember seeing a interview with the people from Warhorse, and they said about, you become really in tune with each other. It's like you might as well be living together. That's that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And we could pick up this puppet now and we could puppeteer a little short thing for you, having not rehearsed anything. and dead. Ta-da! So hopefully that looks good. I have no idea, but you know, hopefully you can see the amount of ease happens when you're in tune with each other and you're listening. So it's not about communicating. When you're actually performing, you might have certain things that you've agreed beforehand, but most of the time breath is a really good way to indicate what you're doing. It may be that you have choreographed something that you will be able to perform and that you know where everything is. What I do in workshops as well is that if I have asked a group of puppeteers who are in groups of 3 or 2 to do a certain activity. So for example, if I ask them to make the puppet tie their shoe, or if I ask them to jump, it's really helpful to actually do the thing yourself, and the other 2 puppeteers to look at the person and go, actually, where does the weight go when I lean down? How do I put my arm? And just kind of do it without thinking about it, but make note of where the weight is going, because that's another thing with the gravity and muscle principle, is that we change our sort of center of gravity a lot of the time when we're doing things. It's really hard to make a puppet fall over because it's such an immediate thing. But doing the actual action will help you make the puppet look realistic, because
and a lot of
when a puppet does it realistically, it's great.
I was going to say that was going to be my next point, was there's nothing more amazing than seeing a puppet do something human.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, so if you saw a puppet, I don't know, tie its shoe or even tucking its hair behind its ears, if it has hair. You know, a lot of times, I don't know the same with you, but anytime I've puppeteered something, say with hair, and I've sort of made it do this or made it sniff or something like that, you know, people go, oh gosh, that's really weird, because it's seeing essentially a toy, an inanimate object,
do something,
behave like a human.
And
that's why a lot of shows will use puppets, because, you know, they can do things also that humans can't. So
like
it's that magic as well.
Absolutely. Like a puppet can fly, a puppet can
like say Warhorse, they couldn't have an actual horse on stage.
Exactly.
So that's why they use a puppet.
So there's some sort of basic principles. Hopefully some of that was helpful. So that was a bit about Bunraku Puppetry. One of our other videos, again, if you haven't seen it, is about the basic principles of puppetry, which is really good. There's lots of principles that go with puppetry, but those are kind of our basic ones that it's like almost like the
bread and butter,
the core toolbox in order to puppeteer anything really. You can object manipulation is another thing that you can do.
I'm trying to find something though.
You could maybe we'll do a little bit of object manipulation, but you'll see in another video we're going to do hand and rod puppetry, and also another video we might do a little bit about object manipulation using that basic principle. And
because anything could be alive,
anything could be a puppet,
anything could be a puppet, anything could be alive. You just have to do those things and it will.
Exactly. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.